you reasons why it is important to debate against evolution. I want to give you reasons why the theory of evolution doesn't make any sense, and how we Christians can prove that God created the world moving forward. Pope Francis in 2014 said, "When we read the creation story in Genesis, we run the risk of imagining that God was a magician with a magic wand which is able to do everything." And he added, "Evolution in nature is not inconsistent with the notion of creation, because evolution requires a creation of being that evolve." So he was saying God created things that could evolve, so there was no contradiction between the theory of evolution and believing in God. And Pope Francis has been quoted by evolutionists saying that even Christians believe in the theory of evolution. But I think the Catholic Church say this because they don't want the Catholics around the world to fight against the scientific world. They don't want to fight against the atheist. Now, even though the Catholics want to make peace with the atheist doesn't want to make peace with the Christians. In the schools, you are never told the possibility that it could be God who created the world. You were told the theory of evolution was the truth. They told you that the theory of evolution was based on science. And since science can't prove God, creationism is not scientific. They said, whenever you come up with an answer, you just say, "Oh, God created everything." And that was just being lazy. But here's the problem. It means that science is biased. If science is truth-seeking, and if the truth is that all the creatures came through evolution, then the final conclusion for science should be evolution. If the truth that everything did come from God's creation, then the final conclusion for science should be creationism. But that is not the case. Science is biased against God. That excludes any answer that involves God. You were told the theory of evolution was the only possibility that the world could come from. You were not taught the alternative. So the theory of evolution is not truth-seeking. It is biased. This is what evolutionists are like. An evolutionist once saw a monkey holding a phone. He didn't know where the phone came from. All he knew was that when he found the phone, the monkey was holding it. So he wanted to find a scientific reason how that monkey created the phone. A creationist came along and told him, the monkey didn't create the phone. It was an engineer who created the phone. The engineer left the phone here and went back to his country. The monkey just happened to be holding it. The evolutionist said, "Prove me that the engineer created it." The creationist said, "I can't. The engineer is not here." Then the evolutionist said, "So creationism is not scientific because you can't prove that the engineer created it." So the evolutionists came up with all sorts of scientific explanation of how the monkey could have created the phone. They come with the theory of evolution, how the monkey made the phone through random collision, mutation. They say it's a matter of probability. They said, given enough time, like billions of years, the monkey could have eventually made the phone. And that is what atheists are like. For the atheists, they do not know where they came from. They do not want to admit that God exists. So they need a theory to explain their own existence. So they need the theory of evolution, because this is the only way to explain things where things came from without God. So without the theory of evolution, there is no atheism. So that is why I'm speaking against the theory of evolution. If I destroy the theory of evolution, I destroy atheism. The evolutionists claim that there are plenty of scientific evidences that support the theory of evolution. But is there? Before I move on, I want to make a very important distinction here. There are two kinds of evolution. There is microevolution and there are macroevolution. Examples of microevolution including Darwinian finches or different kinds of dogs. So for microevolution, nothing new was created. The variation really came from what's already in the genes. You have different kinds of dogs, tall ones, short ones, curly hair ones, straight hair ones, white dogs, brown dogs, black dogs. The variation are not because of genetic mutation. They are what's already in the genes. And you can't breed a dog that have something that is not already in the genes. Like you can't breed a dog with feathers or a dog with wings. Macroevolution, on the other hand, are major changes. Examples include like how they said the dinosaurs evolved into birds, or the story of how we came from monkeys. There are absolutely no evidences for macroevolution. Macroevolution was never observed. All the so-called evidences for evolution are really just microevolution. They say the source of evolution is genetic mutation. But think about it. All the observable genetic mutations are bad. Genetic mutation causes deformation, illnesses. The only place where you'll find good genetic mutation is in the Marvel movies. So as a creationist, we support microevolution. We believe microevolution is scientific. There are plenty of evidences. It is God-given. When God created the world, God gave each creature the ability to evolve so they can adapt to the different environments better. But we are against macroevolution. It is unscientific, it is not observed, and there's no evidence for macroevolution. There are many arguments against the theory of evolution, but because of time constraint, I'm going to just give you three major ones. First, the theory of evolution contradicts with the second law of thermodynamics. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 14, it says, "For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace." And in Hebrew chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word." It means that God created order and God maintained the order. God is a God of order. We Christians believe that God is the source of all order. He brought about orders and he maintained order. Order needs to be maintained. When things are left to its own devices, they tend to go from order to disorder, but never the other way around. I have a cup and it's full of water. Now, if I put in instant coffee into it and mix it, guess what? Disorder happens. Instant coffee got mixed into the water. But it doesn't matter how long I shake it, I can never separate out the coffee from the water, unless I do it manually. I can do it through distillation, and other methods. And it's like fish. Now, fishes live in the seawater, but the saltiness never goes into the body of the fishes. Have you ever wondered why? That's an order. There's order inside chaos. And so we believe that God is the source of order, and God is the one who maintained order. Because things usually always go from order to disorder naturally. Because disorder and chaos are actually more stable than order. Order is unstable. Order needs to be maintained. It needs outside intervention. Without intervention, things tend to go back to chaos. And evolutionists have no explanation of where order came from. They cannot explain, after the Big Bang, why didn't the universe stay as a bunch of heat? Why atoms and stars formed? And where all the orders in the universe came from? Creatures actually have several levels of order or organizations. Let's check out on the screen and see what Dr. Stephen Meyer has to say about organizations in creatures.
We now know that you could mutate a DNA molecule indefinitely without respect to any probabilistic limits, and in the best case, all you would get is a new protein. But proteins have to be organized into biosynthetic pathways. Those biosynthetic pathways will characterize different cell types. Different cell types have to be organized into tissues. Tissues have to be organized into organs. Organs and tissues have to be organized into whole body plans. And the instructions or the information for affecting those higher levels of organization beyond the simple protein are not stored entirely in the DNA. And therefore, What that means is the neo-Darwinian mechanism is simply inadequate to generate a body plan.
My second argument against evolution is that it's statistically impossible. According to the internet, the probability of your existence is 1 in 10 to the power of 2,685,000. Now, let me show you what that number could came from and how big that number is. We know that the DNA is made out of 4 nuclear bases, A, T, C, and G. Now, the smallest natural cellular organism has a genome containing about 224,000 nucleobases. Meaning that if you are going to randomly pull out A, T, C, or G and combining into making the organism, your chance of success is 4 to the power of 224,000. And the human body typically have about 6 to 6.6 billion nucleic bases in its DNA. Now, let me give you an idea of how big that number is. Suppose you have the ability to double your money every year. After the first year, your money is going to increase to 2. After 10 years, it's going to increase to 1,000. After 20 years, it's going to increase to 1 million. After 30 years, it's going to increase to 1 billion. At year 39, it's going to increase to 500 billion, and in year 40, it's going to increase to 1 trillion. Now, from year 0 to year 1, your money only increased by 1. But from year 39 to year 40, your money just grew 500 billion. Why did the numbers suddenly increase by so much? If you have learned year 11 math, you know that these are exponentials. They are not additions, they are not multiples, they are numbers that times by itself. So although the difference between 2 to the power 39 and 2 to the power 40 is only 1 in the exponential, the number actually doubles because it's need to times by 2. And if you earn $500 billion, you'll become the richest person in the world. Now let me show you what real world numbers look like so you can have some ideas. Whether you are in a math exam or in the real world, you'll probably never encounter a number that is more than 10 to the power 50. The chance of winning the lottery, a Division 1 with Powerball, is 1 in 38 million, which is only 4 times the 10 to the power of 7. And the total number of atoms in the universe is 10 to the power of 80. The biggest number you'll ever count in your lifetime is called Google, and it's 10 to the power of 100. This is what 100 zeros behind 1 looks like. But that is not math. Google is just the name of the company. And so these numbers, they are nothing compared to your probability of existence. The probability of your existence is 1 to the power 1 in 10 to the power of 2,685,000. That's 2,685,000 zeros behind the 1. It's a mind-boggling number. That number has a meaning. It's called impossible. If the chance of evolution is so improbable, why do people still believe in the theory of evolution? Because the theory of evolution is not science. It is a religion. The definition of religion is that it's a set of ideas and values held to be true, often based on faith rather than scientific evidence. The religion of evolution is that it doesn't matter how low the probability is. If you give them long enough time, things can happen. You give the monkeys enough time, they can make a phone. That is why in the theory of evolution, you see very big numbers, like 10 million years, 100 million years, 1 billion years. The age of the Earth is 4.5 billion years. They need the big numbers so their theory can work. It takes faith to believe in God, but it also takes faith that to believe your existence is because of a probability of 1 in 2,685,000. Thirdly, the early Earth simply does not have the condition to synthesize life. One of the popular theories about the origin of life is called the RNA world hypothesis. The RNA world hypothesis proposed that before the evolution of DNA and proteins, RNA molecules is the primary form of life. It serves as both a storage of genetic information and catalyst for chemical reaction. But the problem is that RNAs don't replicate themselves. In May this year, a laboratory claimed that they have successfully made RNA replicate themselves and caused some hypes. So in Popular Mechanics, it reported saying that scientists are pretty close to replicating the first thing that ever lived. But if you look into the detail of the research paper, you found that they've used a lot of synthetic materials that is not available in the original Earth. Let's check on the screen of what Dr. Tuo have to say about this experiment.
That they do themselves screams out that life did not start this way. Because even with all of their input, even with all of their human-made reagents that are only available in a modern laboratory and all their ability to have pH control and warm and cool like this with precise reagents to stabilize, only then did they get it to work in 1% yield or less with a fidelity that was not mentioned, never was it shown to be functional, and plus it would be contaminated by all that other 99% of the material that's in there. People are really clever, but with all their cleverness, they're still very far from being able to solve something related to life in a laboratory. And plus, all of the basic components came from living systems. If they had had to make all of these components themselves in a laboratory under prebiotic type methods, they would have been unsuccessful.
I can predict it now. I can see in a few years, this is going to keep happening, of course, and in a few years, there will be a paper that comes out that claims self-replication. It goes back to everything we've shown here, that you got to read the details and pay attention to all the human intervention and all the cheats that went into it.
The work that they do.
So if you're interested in the details, it will be on YouTube. The title is called RNA Self-Replication, the Hidden Obstacles Science Can't Overcome. It's a 15-minute discussion if you're interested. And during the discussion, Dr. James Tuo talked about it, not just about how RNA replicates, the condition or the material that is required, but also the conditions required to make the DNAs. You need the materials. We know that the DNAs need 4 basic nuclear bases, but you need much more than that. If I remember correctly, Dr. James Tuo said that you need about 60 other reagents and minerals, and most of them are not available in early Earth. And in this experiment, all the materials are either coming from living things or made in the laboratory. Not only that, to synthesize, to have the possibility of synthesize a DNA, you need all the material at the same place, at the same time. You need all the material at the right concentration. You want to be free from contaminants or pollutions. If you have failed products or pollutants floating around, they're going to reduce your chance of succeed, because when they are bonding, they are not going to choose what stuff to bond, meaning that the more pollutant, the less your chance of success. You need a mechanism to remove all the contaminants that was produced, which is what they did in the lab. You need the right temperature and the pH. In the experiment, they need to heat up to 80 degrees to make the RNAs open up so they can bond. And they need to drop it down to negative 7 degrees so they can stabilize. And in the early years, there's simply no condition to make any of that. People who support the theory of evolution really have no clue on how complicated the process really is. Whenever I meet a person with so much confidence in evolution, they become, without reason, I will grill them with the ultimate question. If it is really possible to synthesize life in nature, why haven't we able to synthesize anything, not even in the lab? And they will say, because we don't know enough yet. One day, when we know enough, but it will happen. And because we don't have enough time, we need millions of years. Every theory is built on presumption. The presumptions are the things that we assume are true but can't be proven. So for the evolutionist, the presumption is that we can't prove evolution, we can't replicate life formation in the lab because we don't know enough about evolution yet. We need millions of years to prove it. But there is a problem with this argument. If you don't know enough about something, why are you so confident about it? If you need millions of years to prove, you may find out that in a millionth time you are wrong. You don't know. It reminds me of the story of the emperor's new clothes. The weaver made up a presumption. The presumption was that the stupid people can't see the cloth. Only the educated people can. Since we still can't see the cloth, it shows that we are not educated enough yet. But we better pretend that we can see the cloth so that people don't laugh at me. And that theory of evolution is the emperor's new clothes. The evolutionists are pretending that they can see evolution happening, but the reality is that they can't see it and they can't prove it. And this is what they're saying. I can't see it because I don't know enough yet, and there's not enough time for evolution to happen. But if you use your common sense, if you use the basic knowledge about statistics and the second law of thermodynamics and the conditions that is required to make synthesizing life even possible, you will come up with the conclusion that evolution is simply impossible. The emperor looked naked, not because we are stupid or ignorant, but because he simply wasn't wearing anything. We can't synthesize life in the lab because we haven't known enough about how evolution works. But it's not because we don't know how evolution works, but because evolution was never possible and it never happened. Toward the end of the debate, when the evolutionists can't answer my questions, they will usually come back and challenge me. Then what is your theory of life? And since you so believe in creationism, how do you prove that your theory is true? How can we prove that God exists? How can we really prove that God created the world? Well, it's actually much simpler than you think. Creationism can be proven two ways. At the moment, we don't know enough about life to even make one in the lab. Say for one day, say 50 or 100 years later, the scientist finally knows enough about life and was able to make one in the lab, but they found that the conditions, the materials, and the environment does not exist in early Earth. Would that prove that there must be a creator? The second way to prove creationism is through the creation itself. In Romans chapter 1, verse 20 it says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, has been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuses." What the Bible was saying was that the creation of the world actually proves that God indeed created the world. Creationism has another name. It's called the theory of intelligent design. And the basic argument is this: anything that was designed will leave traces of design. So take this bottle back. We know this was designed and was created because you'll never find anything like this in the nature. It was made from pressed metals, it has a cap, and you are able to put water into it. You're never going to go to a beach and dig on the ground or dig into a rock and find anything remotely close to that. So when we see the bottle, we know instantly it was created by someone. So we can identify the design by its function and its information. Just about anything you see around you, anything you see in this room, it has function, it has design. It was designed and created by somebody. Now, if you look at all the animals in light of design, you will find design everywhere. In the spider that builds webs to catch insects, in the bee that's able to collect and deliver honey like a drone, in octopus that's able to change shape to mix in with the environment. And our body is made out of 206 bones and 650 muscles that allow humans to do very complicated movements. All the things you see on the right were obviously created. So that we should come up with the same conclusion that the things on the left were also created. I want to show you what is called a flagellar motor. A flagellar motor is a narrow machine that allows the bacteria to move. The motor in the middle can turn clockwise or anti-clockwise to allow the bacteria to move forward at high speed or change direction. Let me show a short video of how it works.
Ironically, nature has produced one of the most efficient motors in the world. Many types of bacteria are actually propelled by flagellum filaments, driven by a novel rotary motor. Membrane rings make up the rotor, and ions interact between the stator and the rotor to generate torque. This converts electrochemical to mechanical energy with almost 100% efficiency. A slight change in the position of a protein can change the direction of rotation, but a protein can also be used as a mechanical clutch to disengage the motor from the rotor. The rotor can rotate up to 18,000 RPM, but with the filament attached, it only gets around 200 to 1,000 RPM. In translation, it can move roughly 60 cell lengths per second. Ultimately, understanding this natural machine could lead to advances in biological technology.
So I once asked an evolutionist on RedNote, and I showed him the flagellar motor, and I asked him, put down your evolutionary bias and give me your honest answer. Does it look like it was designed or coming out of nowhere? And he said it looked like it was designed. Brothers and sisters, it doesn't take a genius to identify something that was designed. It takes common sense. You just need to be unbiased about how you see the world. And you will find and see traces of God's design everywhere. Let me make a conclusion. The theory of evolution is not truth-seeking. It's biased toward atheism and against God. There are two types of evolution. You have the micro and macro evolution. We, as creationists, accept and believe that there are microevolution. It is evidence-based, there are scientific proofs, but we, on the other hand, we absolutely deny macroevolution ever happened. There were no evidence for macroevolution. Macroevolution could not happen because, one, it contradicts with the second law of thermodynamics, the natural tendency for things to move toward chaos, not order. Two, it is statistically impossible for evolution to happen. And three, the early Earth simply does not have the material, conditions, and the human intervention that is required to even synthesize something that is close to life. And there are three ways to prove that God indeed created the world. One, the order we found in the universe. Two, the impossibility of life forming in the natural world proves that an outside force, God, is required for the existence of life. And three, the functionality and design that we see in every man-made stuff prove that there must be a designer and creator behind all of this. In the same way, the creation does not reject the existence of God. In fact, it is opposite. The creation proves that God must exist. When we look at things through the lens of design, the proof is everywhere. Thank you.